You know, we could all use some encouragement. And I've got some good news for you. Welcome to 5 Minutes with Mark. Well, greetings, friends, and welcome back to 5 Minutes with Mark. I pick up the story in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 6, and we'll be at verse 49. So you remember last time the disciples are out in the boat, straining at the oars, the wind's blowing against them. Jesus is walking on the water and would have walked past them. And we pick up. And when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed it was a ghost and cried out. For they all saw him and were troubled. But immediately he talked with them and said to them, "Be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid." Then he went up into the boat to them, and the wind ceased. And they were greatly amazed in themselves beyond measure, and marveled, for they had not understood about the loaves, because their heart was hardened. Wow. Pretty fascinating that Mark connects the two things, right? The feeding of the 5,000 and the walking on the water and the ceasing of the wind. All of these things are connected. Have you ever thought about that? And what's the connection? Mark says they didn't understand about the loaves because their hearts were hardened. And because their hearts were hardened, when they saw Jesus walking on the sea, and they're terrified because they think it's a ghost. People just don't walk on water in the middle of the night. I mean, let's face it, that would have been a pretty crazy thing to see. So they see Jesus walking on water. They think there's something, weird and spooky out there. And again, it's nighttime in the middle of a lake in a windstorm. I don't imagine it was very bright out there. The only light they would have had would have been whatever lamp light they would have been able to generate. So, we kind of look at these guys like, what's wrong with you? But put yourself in their shoes. That's a pretty strange thing to see. We can tell there's something walking on the water out there, and we don't know what it is. And they were spooked. But they hear his voice. Jesus says, "It's I. Don't be afraid. Be of good cheer. It's just me." And then he comes and he climbs up in the boat. This is the same moment, if you look over in the Gospel of Matthew, where Peter walks on the water. You know the story where Peter says, "If that's really you, Jesus, tell me to come out there." And Jesus says, "Well, come on." And Peter goes out and he's walking and he sinks. Gets a few steps in, sees the wind and the waves, is overwhelmed by that and begins to sink. Jesus saves him. Then they climb aboard. Then Jesus, speaks and the wind ceases, and then they're all amazed and worship him. Here in Mark, we don't get that little bit about Peter. And again, in the Gospels, Gospel of Mark, Peter's story, Peter's voice, Mark's pen, right? And Peter downplays himself. I told you that very early on. Peter's going to downplay his role in everything. You've probably noticed. He mentions when he's there, but we don't see a lot of, we don't hear a lot of Peter speaking. We don't see a lot of his activities because he was humble. He's not trying to write a gospel about himself. He's trying to tell the gospel of Jesus, and he downplays his role in it. So he drops that part out. But he doesn't drop the part where they get into the boat. Jesus climbs in the boat. The wind ceases, and they marvel at this. This is an amazing thing. People just don't have control over the weather. And then we go back to the loaves. They didn't understand about the loaves because their hearts were hardened. So did you think back, why did Jesus send them in the boat by themselves? Why didn't he just say, "Hey guys, wait on me. I'm going to go pray. I'll send the crowd away. I'll go pray and then we can go." He sends them across on purpose. And he sees them out straining at the oars, starts walking out, would have passed them by, but they see him, they freak out, they're terrified. He calms them down. He calms their hearts, and then he calms the storm, and they marvel. And it's all intentional. This entire thing is not about feeding 5,000 people, as I said. This is about Jesus revealing his nature and his ability to these men. Because he realizes these men are going to be the necessary ones who are going to take the gospel into the world. He needs them to get it. He needs them to trust him. He needs them to have faith in him. He needs them to be prepared so that when things get really bad, and they're going to, they're able to continue and function and carry on the mission. This is training. This is discipleship training, Jesus style. I'm going to put you in an impossible situation, and then I'm going to solve it for you. Over and over again, I'm putting you in impossible situations, and then when you least expect it, in a way you can't imagine, I'm going to solve it for you. By the way, Jesus is still about putting his people into impossible situations and then solving them for us if we just have faith, if we just trust him, if we would just believe. We will see the incredible provision and the incredible care, the incredible power of God working on our behalf in our very real lives, in our very real situations. That's what this is all about. He's trying to soften their hearts, just like he's trying to soften yours, just like he's trying to soften mine, so that when we find ourselves in those moments where we just need an answer, we know where to look. When we find ourselves in their moments where we want to panic, we don't, because we have faith to trust him, even in the midst of the storms. That's what it was all about. See you next time. I hope you're enjoying this Bible study, this quick devotion. If you'd like more content, you'd like to know more about me and see more of the things that I'm doing, check out my website, theeclecticmonk.com. There you'll find out about my video vlog, my podcast, and a whole lot of other stuff. Hope you'll join me there. Thanks.